a todos and welcome back to my channel. So today we're gonna discuss the web's most searched questions about Spaniards. So we put into Google search results, why do Spaniards for the US, Australia and the UK? And I'm gonna let you know what they think and hopefully answer some of their questions. If you haven't seen my other video, I have also done a video on what all these three countries think about Spain in general. You might be surprised, amused, or shocked by some of the things they said, but yeah, you can check that video out. I will put it up here and in the description box. So we're gonna start with the UK, do the top 10 backwards, so 10 to 1, then the US, and then Australia. So I'm just working my way from countries depending on their distance to Spain, because I feel like the UK should be asking the best questions and Australia probably the worst, but we'll see.
Number 10. Why do the Spanish dislike the English?
Why do the Spanish dislike the English? Oh, what a question to start on. So this is from the UK. The UK are actually asking this question to Google. Why do the Spanish dislike the English? I don't know, I think it's like this normal country rivalry, to be honest. I mean, there are a lot of Spanish-English couples and like marriages, and there's a lot of crossover. Generally, the more you know your neighbors, the more you dislike them or also love them. So I think there's a bit of that going on. And then I also think that probably just the type of British tourists that come to Spain, get drunk, just come for the sun and the cheap alcohol. It's kind of like how Australians are in Bali. Like if you're just gonna go on that trip, you're gonna give yourself a reputation.
Why do Spanish eat grapes on New Year's?
So at New Year's, Spanish people eat 12 grapes to bring in, to count in the new year. So like 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. And it's supposed to be unlucky to not do it. I believe it's unlucky not to do it more than it is lucky to do it. The Italians also have a really similar tradition, so I don't actually know where it originates from, but it is definitely something that people do. And you will see in supermarkets, they'll have like pre-prepared packs of 12 grapes, and sometimes they're even peeled because like people obviously don't like it. And people who don't like grapes often replace them with something else. Like I've heard of M&Ms and things like that. I don't actually know why though. So Wikipedia says that it started in like the 1880s, 1890s, or the early 1900s, and it was probably designed by grape growers to help sell grapes. Cute. 100 years of grape eating.
Why do Spaniards always late?
Why do Spaniards always late? That's not even English, but Spain is a time flexible culture. Like many other countries, I'd say that it's not on the extreme end, but it is a time flexible culture. Spanish people tend to be like 10 to 15 minutes late. I don't know whether there's any like particular intrinsic reason other than the fact that it's just a social norm, and over time it's become accepted and normal, like in many other time flexible cultures. Yeah, I think it's just a cultural difference.
Why do Spaniards say hostia, O-S-T-I?
Why do Spaniards say hostia? Oh, and the search is spelt wrong. So that's because in Spanish you don't pronounce the H. It is a silent letter like in French. It means communion wafer. And I've searched this because when I was watching, what was the name of that show? The Galician show.
Oh, Farinha.
Farinha. When I was watching Farinha, they used this expression a lot, and I'd heard it before, but I knew it was like kind of like saying, I guess like saying shit or something, but I didn't know exactly what it meant. Yeah, it means communion wafer, and it's just another way to swear, I guess, but like in the same way that we would have said, Jesus Christ. I feel bad saying it even though I'm not religious. But it's just another way of cursing, really. In Estonian, they say kadört. I'm probably pronouncing that really bad, which literally just means devil. So it's just another way to express annoyance or emphasize a point with a word.
Why do Spanish smoke so much?
Why do Spanish smoke so much? I don't think that they do. I think the British smoke more than the Spanish. Can you check the stats? Because in the South, Spanish women smoke a lot, but in the North, I don't really notice anyone smoking that much. And I would say that if I only lived in northern Spain, I would actually assume that the British smoked more than the Spanish. It's a lot cheaper to smoke here. I don't know, maybe it's cultural. I don't actually think that they do though.
They smoke nearly double.
The Spanish smoke nearly double the British. I'm shocked because whenever I've been in the UK, I felt like people smoked a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just cultural. I guess they don't have the same taboo around it. Anglo cultures, I thought not the British, but American and Australian, it's massively taboo to smoke these days. And it's just really antisocial behavior. Whereas I guess here it's not. It's still relatively cheap. They also have quite a big weed consumption culture here. So that probably increases their smoking levels. No?
Why do Spaniards say vale, vale, vale?
These searches are getting funnier. Why do Spaniards say vale, vale? I feel like every time I put the video camera on, I speak so badly. Vale. It's just like saying okay. It's literally just like we would say okay, okay, all right, yeah, you're right. That's what British people say all the time. And it's not that weird. It's just okay.
Why do Spaniards have two surnames?
Why do Spaniards have two surnames? I actually love that Spaniards have two surnames. So they take the first surname, I believe, from their father and their second surname from their mother. And when you get married in Spain, you keep your original surname. So like if I got married, I wouldn't change my surname to my husband's surname. I would just keep my original surname, which would have a combination of my mother and my father's surnames. And I think it's actually pretty democratic and way less sexist and way more awesome. And that's why. You can get awesome name combinations because Spanish surnames tend to like, unless you're Basque or Galician or something like that, but if you come from a really like Castellano backgrounded area of Spain, you get a lot of like double up surnames. So they'll have like two, like you could be like Jose Maria Garcia, and you could get double surnames, but it obviously doesn't mean that your parents were related, but you know, it's a thing. I have had multiple students who have double the same surnames, and then I've also had students who have two hyphenated surnames, so they actually end up with more like 4 surnames. Which is, I don't know why, I really like it. Yeah, so the search result should actually be, why do Spaniards have awesome surnames?
Why do Spaniards lisp?
Why do Spaniards lisp? There's an urban myth that one of the kings of Spain lisped, and that's why some of the sounds in Spanish now are like a th sound. In English, we have a lot of th sounds where our tongue actually leaves our mouth, whereas in Spanish, they have a really similar sound, which is called the dental fricative, and it's almost the same, but your tongue goes behind your teeth, which is how someone in English who had a lisp would pronounce words where your tongue was supposed to leave your mouth, because we really like to blah, 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 in English, like it's a spitty language. But yeah, so I guess that we've always identified it as a lisp, but really it's just like a different phonic. And actually on top of that, not even everyone in Spain has it or uses it, because if you are ceseo, you wouldn't have it at all in your speech. If you are thetheo, you would have it a lot. And if you were distinction, you would have it for some letters, but not for other letters that maybe it would have it on in thetheo.
Why do Spaniards eat so late?
Why do Spaniards eat so late? This one actually is funny because there is actually a technical reason. So, around the world, people tend to eat... Hi, Chapo! Around the world, people tend to eat at similar hours due to light hours. And during Franco's reign, he changed the clocks. I'm not even joking. He changed the clocks so that Spain was on the same time as Germany and Italy, which puts it technically at the wrong time for its light hours. So probably they always would have eaten a little bit late, like the Italians do, but the time difference has just like pushed dinner back that bit more. And obviously now it's just a norm. It's weirdly easy to get used to eating late when you live here though, because of the time, because of the light hours. It feels like it makes less sense in winter, but definitely in summer it makes complete sense. And in the Canary Islands, they are on the technically correct time zone for the light hours. And they do actually eat a little bit earlier, especially compared to places like Andalusia.
Why do Spaniards cut in line?
Why do Spaniards cut in line? I'm not sure that they... do they? That's a weird one to be number one. Like, there's definitely different like rules about queuing in Spain. And you do tend to ask... They'll tend to ask the order and then maybe go away and come back, which you probably wouldn't do, like, say, in Australia. So maybe British people are just missing that point where people are asking because they aren't understanding what's happening. And sometimes they will just go forward to ask a question, which maybe wouldn't really be that acceptable in some Anglo cultures, but obviously is because it's a different culture here and people are more relaxed and less in a rush. I don't know, I don't really notice people cutting in line. I often offer, like at the supermarket, if someone's only got like 2 or 3 things for them to go in front of me, and they often say no. So there's not really, I don't really notice too much line cutting. There definitely was in Andalusia an assumption that if an older person was behind you, even if they only had like 1 or 2 items less than you, that you would let them go in front of them. But they still don't tend to cut lines. Sometimes little abuelitas will come up really close behind you when they want to they want you to offer for them to go in front. But they still don't tend to cut in line. I actually find that like once you get the hang of their queuing system and you understand that they're all discussing the queue, they don't cut. So maybe it's just that you're missing the conversation, which would make sense. Like it's hard when you first arrive to pick up on it. I enjoyed the questions. I thought like question number 1 was a bit like weird for number 1. I'd imagine it on the like top 20, but maybe not number 1. But I mean, all the questions have cultural relevance. I can see how a British person coming to Spain would want to have these questions answered. The United States.
Why do the Spaniards speak so fast?
Why do the Spaniards speak so fast? I know the answer to this, actually. So pretty much the studies show that regardless of the language, we can convey the same amount of information in the same amount of time, regardless of what language we're speaking. And generally speaking, English is a much more concise language than Spanish. So Spanish speakers do actually speak faster than English speakers because they're getting the same amount of information across in the same time, but with more words. And that is the short answer to that question. I learned that very recently, actually.
Number 9. Why do Spaniards say tío?
Why do Spaniards say tío? It's like I guess it's just like a slang. Like we might say, mate all the time, whereas they say uncle. It's just a way to refer to friends or other people, or yeah, it's just kind of a slang. Yeah, it can be more like when you're like talking to your friends, ¿qué pasa, tío? Or it could also be like if you're getting annoyed by someone, ¿qué pasa, tío? How we would use mate in Australia.
Why do Spaniards bullfight?
Why do Spaniards bullfight? I think they ask themselves the same question, to be honest.
Why do Spaniards say hostia?
Why do Spaniards say hostia again? I don't know. I'm surprised people notice how much they say it. Same answer as before. Communion wafer is a way of cursing in Spanish.
Another repeater. Why do Spaniards eat so late?
Why do Spaniards eat so late? Time differences and Franco.
Why do Spaniards say vale?
Why do Spaniards say vale? I never even thought about this as being weird. It's just okay. Like, I'm surprised that everyone wants to know this.
Why do Spanish lisp?
I gave you a really long explanation before, and I'm not going to go into it again.
Number 1, with a bullet. Why do Spaniards cut in line?
No. That is so weird. I don't know whether it's just where I live. I just don't notice it. And even in Andalusia, I never really noticed it. And it's like a really touristy area. Maybe when you're a tourist and you're going to places like Ibiza and that, Spanish people are just getting so frustrated with tourists that they're cutting in line. That's the only explanation I can give, because generally speaking, I don't think that they do. I'm surprised how similar the questions from the US are to the questions from the UK, to be honest. But we'll see what Australia has in for us, because we're probably fully working from stereotypes. Australia, what have you got for us today?
Why do Spaniards have bars on their windows?
Why do Spaniards have bars on the windows? I've never noticed that. I only noticed that when I was in Brazil. Are they talking about Mexico again? Or are they talking... Spaniards always have shutters on every window, but I don't think an Australian would call that a bar. That's weird. I think they're talking about Mexico again.
Why do Spaniards bullfight?
Why do Spaniards bullfight?
Why do Spaniards live so long?
Why do Spaniards live so long? I actually have recently covered this in another video. You can find that here. Let's just say bean consumption. Bean consumption and diet. And I honestly think that Spanish people are a lot less stressed. And apparently stress is one of the key factors in life expectancy. And they also love to laugh. And I recently listened to a podcast where they were saying that laughter actually lowers your cortisone levels back to normal. And if you're laughing all the time, then you're reducing the stress on your body and therefore living longer. If you want to live longer, eat beans, spend more time with your friends, and go for a walk every day. That's literally how Spaniards live.
Why do Spaniards have two last names?
Why do Spaniards have two last names? Because they're awesome.
Why do Spaniards say Ostia?
How would any Australian know about Ostia? Where are they all hearing this? Do you think it's like that? I hear it sometimes, but there's so many other swear words that I hear way more often than Ostia. They're all watching Farinha.
Why do Spaniards smoke so much?
Okay, in Australia, we really don't smoke a lot at all. Smoking is so expensive in Australia and it's super antisocial, and there's been really strong and strict government campaigns against it for a really long time, so we don't really have a smoking culture. And definitely Spanish smoke more than Australians. I guess it's cheaper and it's been more culturally acceptable, and maybe because they already have longer life expectancies, they're not as worried about the cancer as we are. That could also be a factor. If you've seen IT Crowd and that smoking episode, that's what smoking in Australia is like.
Why do Spaniards say vale?
I don't know why saying okay would be so weird. It's like, did no one think to say, the search should be, what does vale mean? Not why do Spaniards say okay all the time. Why do Spanish eat so late? I'm seeing a running theme here. Franco.
Why do Spaniards cut in line?
No, really?
Sorry. Why do Spaniards cut in line?
I actually genuinely think that this might just be, I don't know how to explain this. I think that there's a social stereotype that Spanish people, but not just Spanish people, like Italians, Croatians, Greeks, Portuguese cut in line, and therefore maybe you notice when people cut in line. It's not like nobody ever cuts in line in Australia either. It's just, and also when you can speak the language, you're more likely to be able to argue with the person who cut in front of you, and therefore it doesn't really happen as much. I think it all kind of plays into that, and when you're a tourist and you're in a touristy area and the locals are sick of not being able to get anything done fast, I think it all is reinforcing stereotypes, because I honestly don't really notice it. I really don't think people cut in line in front of me. Sometimes people are a bit pushy, but they don't cut, they just push you into submission.
Number one with a bullet. Why do Spaniards lisp?
I guess the reason why, I can understand why Australians and Americans would ask this question. So we're more exposed to Latin American Spanish where they don't use the dental fricative at all. So I can see why we would ask that question because maybe, but I would have thought for the British that Spanish from Spain would have been the dominant form and that it wouldn't have been a thing that they would need to ask about. But for Australians and Americans, I can definitely see why you would be used to Latin American Spanish and then you would hear Spanish from Spain and be like, are they all lisping? But yeah, no, it's dental fricative. They don't all have lisps. So like generally we all have the same stereotypes about Spain and the same questions about Spain. I don't even think that there was one that was better than the others because they were all kind of all exactly the same questions, more or less. You know what's really interesting though? The other day when I did a quick search, I did more of a global search. I didn't limit it to Anglo cultures. And when you do a more global search, there's a lot of like national, like racial questions about Spain. Whereas I think actually Australia, America and the UK are also multicultural. We don't even care about like what the nationality or like racial background or profiling of Spanish people is. Isn't that like kind of interesting? So I hope you enjoyed that video and I hope I sufficiently answered any of your questions if any of you have wondered about the same things that all of us Anglos clearly wonder about. And yeah, let me know if you have any weird assumptions about Spain or Spanish people or us Anglos, like, but be nice because I have to read them. No one even asked about kissing. I'm really surprised that no one asked about kissing because that's kind of a thing that seems to be like all foreigners who move here are first caught off guard with all the kissing. Interesting. But yeah, late dinners, an obsession of Anglos, the lisp, and line cutting. Apparently you guys are cutting in front of a lot of tourists. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you all very soon with some other Spanish content, I am sure. Anyway, give me a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all very soon. Hasta luego. Besos. Why do Spaniards throw donkeys off towers? Do Spaniards throw donkeys off towers? That is so weird. Donkeys off towers? I've never even heard of this phenomenon. Why did the Spanish say ja 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 ja? They don't. It's that J makes the like laughing sound in Spanish, whereas the H doesn't make a sound. So if they wrote ha ha ha, how we would, it would be ah 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 ah. Whereas with the JA, it's like ha 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 ha.
I think it's kind of funny because it shows that a lot of people are sliding into other people's DMs and they've never heard Spanish.
It's so funny to think about it because it literally means that you don't speak any Spanish, but you are for some reason texting with a Spanish speaker. So how are you sliding into these DMs, guys? My favorite is when they do the JE though.